Good morning. You know, the LA Rams, during their Super Bowl run, you remember how Aaron Donald was like, hey, I want to run it back or I'm going to ride off into the sunset? They didn't make a lot of changes in free agency or the NFL draft. So all things being equal, that's literally the best case scenario for them. Good morning. I'm James. This is your daily dose of sports and snark for the greatest sports city in the world, Los Angeles. This is Faithful Angelenos. I cannot begin to tell you how happy I am. It is a Friday morning. It is May 6, 2022. Let's start off. I want to thank the new subscribers that joined in, but even more special, when you start a YouTube channel, they say you're lucky to get 40 subscribers in the first year. We've been out for only 2.5 months. We have 100 subscribers. I am humbled. Thank you for getting in on the ground floor. I appreciate you. If you like the content that we've been putting out, talking LA sports, feel free to clickety-clack the like button, clickety-clack the subscribe button. There's a notification bell. Hit that. We put out a new video between 9 and 10 a.m. every day that'll tell you it's there. Sharing is caring. Let people know we exist and comment. I'm not perfect. My wife tells me all the time. Now, before we get to the main topic of the day, which is LA Rams football, look at the scoreboard and the notes. The Dodgers and the Cubs game today, it's already been postponed. They'll play a doubleheader tomorrow. Edmonton will come into town. They're taking on the LA Kings at 7 tonight in Game 3 of the Stanley Cup playoffs. And the Sparks kick off the WNBA season. They play the Indiana, whatever they're called, at 5. With the notes, yesterday we talked about the Chargers. The Chargers made a signing yesterday. They were talking with Kyle Van Noy, a middle linebacker, while I was doing my submission yesterday. They did in fact sign him. He's a linebacker. He won a few rings as a mainstay with the New England Patriots. The defensive makeover of the Chargers, I think that's about as complete as it's going to get. The Clippers have signed Robert Covington, a 2-year extension, 2 years, $24 million. They acquired him in a trade with Portland. Here's something that I found rather interesting. The Dodgers, a couple of days ago, I was mentioning that Max Muncy has this lousy batting average. And it is a lousy batting average. It's 130. But he gets a walk every 19.5% of the time that he's at the plate. Yeah. So he's still getting on. He's still helping the team. It just looks bad because of his batting average. Dodgers, by the way, are leading what turns out to be a tough division. The NFL West right now is the only division with a team without a team below 500. Kings, I've been trying to look for bright spots after that ass kicking they took the other night. Edmonton took a page from the Kings playbook. Circa 2012. They're out hitting the Kings. It was a bloodbath in a sense. Game 2, they hit the Kings 48 times. But I would say that there is a subtle bright side to getting hit that often. Possession. You can't hit the other guy when you're controlling the puck. So, somewhere in there, there's a hint for how the Kings may adjust for Game 3. UCLA basketball, Coach Mike Cronin is expecting the Bruins to utilize the full court press a ton next year. Here's why. The players that have left the program, you look at center Miles Johnson and Cody Riley, those guys were on their way out. They were kind of slow. Meanwhile, the recruits that are coming in, even the bigs, are fast. So expect this dramatic adjustment for the way the Bruins play next year. Also, with the Bruins basketball team, they expect to fill a vacancy in the coaching staff this month. Michael Lewis, he was an assistant with UCLA. He left to run Ball State. So, success breeding success for him. Let's talk one more time today about the LA Rams. Now, the Rams, as I mentioned earlier, they didn't make a lot of changes via free agency or the draft. That's going to suit them just fine. If you look at this whiteboard over here, we used it yesterday to talk about the Chargers. We ran through the roster changes. You might not have been able to read the whiteboard yesterday if you saw that clip. But if you look at this one behind me, because what I did yesterday was I included last year's starters and this year's starters. That board was an absolute mess because of all these changes that the Chargers had made. Look how much cleaner this board is. There's not 6 new starters on defense or 7 for the Chargers. There's only two or three for the defense. There may be only 2 new starters on offense. This is exactly what the Rams wanted. So today we'll go through the names and we'll spend a little bit of time talking about how they fit in schematically. Now, I want to make a clarification, though. Please note, I listed Joe Noteboom as a returning starter at left tackle. I realize Andrew Whitworth was the number 1 left tackle, but he was hurt so often in the last couple of years that Noteboom got a lot of starts. I consider him a returning starter. Also, I would say the same for Gaines at nose tackle. Sebastian Joseph Day was supposed to be their starter. He missed a big chunk of last year. So let's start off with the Rams and how this is going to run. The Rams' success is based on a concept called the illusion of complexity. What that means is they'll bring out the same formation repeatedly, they'll have the same guy go in motion, and the quarterback, the running backs, the receivers, they make a read. This is all prior to the snap. I remember the first time I saw this and took note was when the Rams defeated the Cowboys during their first Super Bowl run, the one where they lost to the Patriots. The Rams almost always come out in 11 personnel. 11 personnel, 1 running back, 1 tight end, 3 wide receivers. Okay? So there's a lot of consistency there. But they made the play look exactly the same before every snap. They would send, and I'm about to bring some names back out of the past, they would send Robert Woods in motion over and over. Jared Goff, the quarterback then, he would see the defense adjust. If the defender, by the way, didn't follow Woods across the line of scrimmage, Goff knew it was the zone. Maybe he hands it off to Woods on a jet sweep. But what if somebody followed Woods, right? Well, then Goff would look at the middle linebacker. If the middle linebacker was out of position, he would hand it off to Todd Gurley. If the linebacker was in position, Goff knew to play action pass. So it's the same concept over and over and over. The Cowboys look stupid. Now, they've tweaked it over the years to accommodate new personnel. Goff liked to bootleg. Matthew Stafford doesn't like it. He's not comfortable doing it. There were times before this year and last year where the offensive line showed a few too many cracks. McVay would switch the personnel from 11 to 12. He would add another tight end. So there could be a new wrinkle next year. That's why I'm saying all this. I don't know what the new wrinkle is. I could only have a guess. Every team is gunning for the champs. So on some level, McVay is probably considering some sort of a change. I think, could be wrong, that is why you keep hearing stories about Odell Beckham Jr. on the periphery, that he might come back. Remember, Odell Beckham, he got hurt during the Super Bowl, and the Rams have replaced him with a new starter. They signed a free agent, Allen Robinson, from the Chicago Bears. Is it possible that we might see a lot more empty backfield out of the Rams next year? Do they bring back Odell Beckham Jr.? Do they now have 4 wide receivers that could break the game wide open at any time? Is it? You tell me. I could see empty backfield. I could even see something like almost a run and shoot from back in the 80s. I have no idea, but I'm just speculating. Now, also, notice the consistency on the offensive line. There is literally only one person who can compete to get into the starting lineup. That would be their top draft pick, Bruss. They're not necessarily sure about left guard. He might be able to take out Evans. But everybody else on the offensive line remains intact. Now, much like the Chargers, who are coached by a former Rams defensive coordinator, the champs also like to pull their wide receivers in close to the offensive line to assist with blocking. How does that matter? Because before Cooper Kupp was a star last year, Cooper Kupp needed to make sure that he had a place on the team. He is so effective because he would get his nose dirty. He would block. He became so tremendous at it that the Rams are one of the few teams that will run to the outside with consistency. It's also why you see the Rams run a lot of screen plays. You have that many blockers in, dump off a screen pass, he's got the blockers set up. So like I said, I am curious to see how Sean McVay adds a new wrinkle. I don't necessarily know what it is. Oh, by the way, I mentioned players replacing injured Rams during the course of last year, Gaines and Noteboom. Keep an eye on draft pick Kyrell Williams. Kyrell Williams is a running back. He already does a lot of what Darrell Henderson did last year. Henderson, by the way, is the guy who started when Cam Akers was injured with an Achilles. I think Williams might actually take Henderson's spot on the roster. Just a thought. Let's switch over to the defense. Notice that there are only 2 confirmed new starters for next year. There might wind up being 3. We'll get to that in a moment. The defensive line returns intact. The Rams, everybody loves Aaron Donald. The Rams actually also like Greg Gaines and Ashawn Robinson teaming up. They eat up a lot of the other blockers, and that opens it up for Donald. But when you look at the linebacking situation, yes, it looks like an upgrade with Bobby Wagner taking over for Reeder, but look at this defensive end or this edge rusher. I am very curious to see if Justin Hollins can hold on to the top spot to replace Von Miller. Because how do you replace Von Miller? Exactly. How? There is a very good chance that draft pick Daniel Hardy gets a really strong look at replacing Hollins. It wouldn't be too surprising if you see the Rams scour the waiver wires looking for an upgrade. Now, Hardy, for his side of the story, describes himself as absolutely relentless. Well, that's great, but you're going to need results. Hardy, you, sir, have a shot at cracking the starting lineup. You need results. We mentioned the outside linebackers. They already know what they're going to get from Leonard Floyd on one edge rush. But the inside linebackers are interesting to me. They're okay with Ernest Jones at an inside linebacker. But yesterday when I was talking about the Chargers, I mentioned the Chargers possibly adjusting their defensive scheme to a 3-3-5 because they want to accommodate with nickel coverage so that one defensive back can play the so-called star position. The star position is something the Rams invented. It's sort of you take a defensive back that's elite and you give him the responsibilities not just of a defensive back but of a linebacker. With the Rams, Jalen Ramsey has a star position all locked up. He can play cornerback. He can blitz. He can play the run. He's all over the place. But if you take Ramsey away from cornerback, if you make him a hybrid linebacker defensive back, well, now you need another defensive back in there. Otherwise, you're exposing the safeties deep. This is how Robert Rochelle got a lot of play calls last year, right? But if you're going to go with a 3-3-5, then you're wondering which linebacker goes. Well, you're not going to take out Floyd. Would you take out Ernest Jones? See, Bobby Wagner was known as somebody who could cover from sideline to sideline, make plays from one end of the field to the other. It's possible. It sure as hell would be a new look for the Rams on defense. To the defensive backs, you might remember the Rams during the draft, they traded to bring back Troy Hill because Darius Williams, he wound up leaving. Darius Williams went to Jacksonville as a free agent. And by the way, you're certainly going to find out how the grass isn't greener even in Florida. But let's get back to this. If you have Ramsey playing the star, Ramsey is going to be all over the place and he's going to get winded at some point. He can't play every snap, obviously. But that's what made the draft day trade for Troy Hill so important. Hill knows everything the Rams can do. So, yeah, I would say there's going to be a talent drop-off when Ramsey needs to catch his breath, but Hill can actually play the backup as the star role and be very effective. Hill was actually the first player that former defensive coordinator Brandon Staley tried out as the star. The original idea with the star was to have Ramsey lock down half the field and just have Hill be a major disruptor everywhere. Now what they do, they have Ramsey be an elite disruptor everywhere. Troy Hill might wind up being a version of a shutdown corner. Rochelle will still get his playing time. So what I would say is, don't read the trade for Troy Hill as a slap in the face to Rochelle. Rochelle's going to get his snaps. But if you can have a special star position player on the field at all times, you should do that if you're the Rams. Because now It doesn't matter if Ramsey's on the field or not. If you're the opposing quarterback, you're like, oh, damn, I got to account for this guy now. So there's not a drop-off. It's such a quirky position that confuses opposing quarterbacks. And I think Aaron Donald realizes this, which I think is probably the reason why he's still got a smile on his face, even though the Rams got rid of allowed Von Miller to walk in free agency. So you tell me what you think. Because even though the Rams didn't make a lot of changes, I think the few changes that they've made will have a really interesting impact. Now, if you enjoyed today's episode, I appreciate it. I thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe to Faithful Angelenos. We'll be back tomorrow. I'm James. Thanks for watching. Faithful Angelenos is a Kian Corte El Queso production. Take care.